Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. I am so glad that you found your way here to my little world. This is my first video, and I just want to jump right into it. Um, I've been sitting on these ideas for years now, and I never really understood how I wanted them to take shape and how I wanted to share them with other people. Recently, I have been writing a lot of essays, but I don't know, like the little shining star in me is like, girl, you want to be in front of a camera. And I think that's the digital age that we live in. And very appropriate to start off my first video with this topic that I'm going to introduce. So, I've been pondering, I've been researching, I've been experimenting, I've been living within the digital space, within cyberspace for years now, just like everybody else. Um, it wasn't until probably about 3 years ago where I was a little bit more curious and I wanted to step outside of the position of user and understand who the producers of this space were, how this space worked, what were the rules, the laws, and the principles of this space. What does this space mean for the future of humanity? And by space, I'm talking about the digital space, right? Cyberspace. And I've struggled. I have struggled just like everybody else. I have struggled immensely um, with social media, with translating my human self onto digital platforms. I've suffered from all of the digital diseases that have come about, such as comparison, delusion, paranoia, anxiety, depression, and so forth. Many, 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 many issues, right? The what's the point? Everybody else is living a life, and what's the meaning of mine? I've dealt with that, right? And so I've shied away from making a home in the digital space the way that I wanted to because I didn't really think that it was possible. I didn't think it was possible. Now, mind you, I'm in that in between generation where I grew up with computers, but I still had the first decade of my life, for the most part, um, was still running on analog, right? So I was still outside and there was still neighborhood kids and there was boredom, slowness, and everything was the color of sepia. It was a great time. Childhood nostalgia was great, right? And then when I hit my early teens, that's when Facebook dropped, and then slowly, that's when there's MySpace. I wasn't really into that. I was huge into Tumblr. Tumblr was great. Tumblr was what I liked about the internet. What I want to bring back about the internet. It wasn't performative. It wasn't showy. It was niche and it was fun. It was interesting. It was exploratory. It was deep. It required presence to really like understand Tumblr, and you could build communities on there. Um so yeah, then there was Tumblr, then there was Instagram. Instagram got me early. I want to say 2015. It is now 2026. It is now 2026 and I'm still just getting over that app, which is crazy. It's so crazy to me. And so I've taken a lot of periods of on and off again. We've had an on and off relationship with cyberspace because I don't like being in places. I don't like doing things that I don't understand. And I'm not here proclaiming that I completely know how the internet works and I could see the future of the internet. That's pretty much what I'm saying is I don't, and I don't think anybody can. And that is our saving grace. That is going to be our saving grace. I say this often. I don't think that the internet can be colonized, right? It can't be colonized. Our data centers, our the infrastructure to hold the internet, now that can be monopolized. But aside from that, if we were able to switch ownership or build our own infrastructure, we could technically create a whole new planet in cyberspace and become undetected, be it operate by new rules and new values and new ways of looking at things and imagination and rehabilitation and using the internet as a regenerative tool instead of one that is leading to mass societal, cultural, and soul decay. So recently I read, what was it? It was Simulation and Simulacra. I think that was just the full title, by Baudrillard. And that was a fun, very difficult read. And I'm not here to say, like, I am a philosophy lover, but I will never proclaim that I know exactly what these people are talking about. They lose me most of the time, they lose me. But I get just enough of what I need in order to continue to build my own, picture of an understanding of things and to, use some of their writing as tools to formulate and synthesize my own perspective on what's going on. So I've come up with this theory, okay? It's the theory of digital adaptation. And I have my laptop here. So I'm going to go a little back and forth. So sit back and relax. Put this on in the background. No pressure to lean in and listen intently. Now, if you do, I'm honored, but no pressure. It might be a little messy, but life is messy, and figuring things out is messy, and building new worlds is messy, and living can be messy. So we're gonna get through this together. So I started the preliminary rough draft of this concept, of this, I hate that word, concept, of this idea. And so I'm going to read a little bit, stop, read a little bit, stop, try to get through my typos. Theory of digital adaptation. We have descended deep into the digital simulacra. We are constantly inundated with bits, frequencies, and data that act as a triumvirate to quickly build a reality around us. So, pause. Bits, frequencies, data. You know how, like, in science or physics we have like natural laws like gravity, what goes up must come down, and like the law of thermodynamics and all of those things. Well, the digital world works by those same type of forces, and we can see these through bits, frequencies, and data, right? We can no longer fathom a life without devices. I know I can't. um Sometimes I think about, like, oh yeah, sure, like, like jump on the hippie train of, like, yeah, the Ted Kaczynskis of the movement of, like, let's just throw everything out and, like, just pretend that technology was never invented, and let's go back to this archaic way of living that we all know is not, nobody, like, not everybody's going to be on board with that. So, like, what do we do now? What do we do now? We can no longer fathom a life without devices. We can no longer fathom a life without devices and without the compulsion to check in, without a constant flow of information piling up our sensory channels, leading to mass inflammation. I've always heard too much of a good thing is a bad thing, but now I understand what this means in praxis. It would be neglectful for each and every one of us not to ponder on the building and transmigration to digital spaces. In history, I'm a history nerd. We always talk about migration, 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 like moving from this land to this land and like the coming to America and the American dream and the immigrants coming here and well, we're having another huge great migration and it's the great migration to the digital spaces that has been happening for the last 2 decades, right? But have we asked ourselves what the impact of this all is? Have we taken the time to understand the magnitude of this great evolutionary leap? The internet, like I said, scared me. I didn't understand what it was. I didn't understand the difference between the corporations and the platforms and the actual internet until I did my due diligence. But moving forward, one of the hardest points of integration for me has been growing up in a rapidly digitized world. I am just on the cusp of two paradigms meeting face to face that I can extrapolate to my past and remember simpler times, but I still possess the aptitude and the exposure to be considered a digital native. Still, I find myself, you know what? I'm going to start saying I'm digitally indigenous. Side note, digital native. And people say, oh, digital natives, these kids are digital natives. Like, I'm digital indigenous. That was for me. That one's for me. Okay. Um, Still, I find myself struggling to understand this new digital world, especially in moments where it seems human essence might be gone forever. Now, I know that we have all felt the alienation of being online. I know that we've all felt eerily disconnected talking to somebody or watching people online. We've all felt this. And so I'm asking us that question again. I've been pondering on emerging technologies for a while now. It is something pivotal that affects all aspects of our lives. So I think that as a technologist, it's more of a requirement than an interest. I also feel the effects of not staying up to date and becoming entrapped, and then entrapped in the never-ending whirlpool of algorithms and data farming. This is why digital adaptation is so important. Okay, they are harvesting these corporations and companies we all know. I mean, they tell us, so it's not like, ooh, this is a conspiracy. Like, it's none of that. We all know that we are the products of these algorithms, of these platforms. It is behavior modification at its finest using the digital space. It's an exquisite engineering feat, I might add. So, Meta, I'm going to give you your flowers. Um, Google, I will give you your flowers because I'm not afraid to say that you guys know what you're doing. But I am here to say that this is a certain life and death situation for the individual and the human that we're faced with. And the adaptation is part of our evolutionary process so that we don't go extinct. Cyberspace, the internet, machine intelligence is here to stay, whether we like it or not. The last 2 years, I was crying like a little baby about this stuff. Um, and I give myself permission to do that because I really went deep and I read the white papers and I did the research and I wanted to understand the mathematics behind algorithms and sociobiology introducing this concept of behavior engineering. I went deep and I wept because I was like, wow, this is a mammoth of an entity we're dealing with. This is a mammoth of a project. But, you know, being afraid doesn't get anything done. Being fearful, being lacking courage, bowing my head in defeat doesn't do anything. It would mean death in nature, right? It would mean death in nature. And this is why I started off by saying that we have descended deep into the digital simulacra, right? So we're like simulation 3x, right? 3x. Because we have the earth, nature, organic timelines. Then we have artificial timelines. We have culture, civilization, the fall into history, bureaucracy, communications revolution, technology, industrial revolution, mandatory schooling, get a degree, get a job, invest into retirement, and die. And then now we have the third, which is you must learn, you must transmigrate yourself into the digital space and exist there. So we're existing in the digital simulacra, we're existing in the material simulacra, the cultural simulacra. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so if I don't understand how to operate within these 3x simulacras, I'll eventually get lost. And they're all mimicries of the original, which is the organic timeline. And if you ever watch nature, nature is fierce, nature is intelligent, nature is ruthless and abundant at the same time. And if you don't learn the law of the land and the way that the earth shifts and moves and its creatures that crawl all over her, if you don't learn that, you will be eaten within 2 days. There's this guy who I thought his story was really interesting. McCandless. He went by some funky name. I forgot what it was, but he was a little spunky. And I hate that his story ended like that, but I do feel something by his audacity and his courage to go out into the Alaskan, was it Alaska? It's the Alaskan wilderness, completely unprepared. I think he made it like 2 weeks. I don't know, but sadly he succumbed to his adventure. But back to the story, right? Machine intelligence, the digital space, is here to say whether we want it to or not. Digging our heads in the sand and are putting our tushes up in the sky will not solve anything, will not build anything new, will not redirect energy, will not harness the change, the capacity for transformation. It won't do any of that. And so we are past the point of retracing our steps backwards to a time space without advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence, geoengineering, etc. We can wish upon a star all we want. We can wish upon a star all we want that this will get better and that all our digital disease and our problems will magically go away if we just closed our eyes and went to sleep. But no, we are now at a crucial point in time where we need to press onward through adaptation. If we don't adapt now, we will be consumed. Okay? And I'm guilty of this, like I just said, of being afraid. I have flirted with the ideas of retreat for a while now, a deserter's paradise where I don't have to face the facts of reality's most pressing questions. Listen up, if you're alive, you have a responsibility. You have responsibility to ask questions. You have responsibility to question. You have responsibility to go out and get the answers for yourself. I am here to face my fears, and I've decided to enter this digital space with the knowledge of adaptation. Do not forget, Do not forget. This is why history is imperative. Do not forget that we have done this before. The reason that you are here today is because your predecessors, your ancestors, they all adapted. And adapted doesn't mean lie on your back and take it. Adapted doesn't mean just, be like the wind and, let things change you and do things you don't want to do. Adaptation is an intelligence, it's an innate need to push forward despite the landscape, despite the political landscape, despite the digital landscape. We must adapt. And where have we seen this done before? One of my favorites, one of my favorite eras. That sounds so bad. That sounds so bad. Enslavement and slavery was not my favorite era. But I'm just saying, I like the story of Harriet Tubman. I like the story of people who, despite being in hostile territories and hostile paradigms and hostile worlds and hostile whatevers, managed to find a way out and go back and find another way out and go back and keep finding a way out. Whether through the lens of Darwin's theory of ultimate adaptation known as evolution, or through the lens of indigenous origin stories tucked safely away in deep indigenous lands, today we are all the survivors of descendants who faced reality head on and chose to adapt to ever changing paradigms and realities. So, with this understanding, we must remember to think like those who came before us, like the descendants whose primal desire to live was their modus operandi. Individually and together, we must think outside the box in order to survive. What is the point of subjecting yourself to the deepest form of research by literally restructuring your life, i.e., me? By spending copious amounts of times, hours, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours, scouring through information, synthesizing new ideas, and tucking them away in a cave, like the Dead Sea Scrolls. The internet is an amazing thing. I mean, it's instant connection with just about more than 70% of the world's population. So I would be very ignorant and naive to think that I should not be a part of this. But I've also understood the distinction between platforms and the internet. And right now, we are in a space where the internet has been monopolized to a certain extent. We have been convinced that these platforms are the only things, the only companies that exist to offer us to offer us the internet, to offer us access to this universe, this world, this place. It's not true. Um and it's not always going to be like that, because I do know people building, and there's people who build on the internet, and I think it's fabulous. In cyberspace, I think it's fabulous. But I'm not going to throw away the platforms yet. Just yet. I'm going to share my ideas first. And then, eventually my goal is to connect with builders, understand how to actually build infrastructure in this world to hold up that world. Mm, 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 mm. So a little bit about why there's this need to distinguish between technology, the internet, cyberspace, and platforms. Technology is one thing. The story that fuels its progression is another. Inhumane platforms such as Meta, and I say inhumane only because it's basically their verbiage, right? Mind control, behavioral modification. You know what else you know what else partakes in behavioral modification? Parasites. They will change your behavior so that you become prey. Um So, yes, inhumane. Inhumane because its desire is not to regenerate human essence. Its desire is not to support humanness. Inhumane platforms such as Meta or OpenAI are the ones introducing us to advanced technologies with deeply embedded biases and sinister motivations. So they are like, this is a terrible example, but it's like the only example that's popping up into my brain right now. Like, they're the dope sellers. Like, they're the ones that have the good dope, and they've marked it with this like hot pink color and awesome branding that all the fiends want that dope. And they've introduced it to the street, and now they're popping and everybody wants it because they were the first ones to introduce it to us. If you catch my drift. um because these companies have become synonymous with techne itself, it has muddied the fundamental issue at hand. It is not technology itself, but it is tech weaved through myth that corrupts our ability to imagine alternative design ethics, digital ethics, and uses of technology. You know, there's other tech cosmologies out there. There's other ways to do things out there. I'm not here to tell you what they are. I'm not here to list them. If you want me to go through some, I ton of books, and I've talked to a lot of people and can give you some ideas where to start. But just know that there is always another way. There is always another way. Nature and its mimics, such as the simulacra, such as the simulation, there's always another way. There's always another way. Infinite possibilities, right? um The cold hard truth is, no matter how much we are left dissatisfied by these platforms, they are not going to dissolve overnight. This is where I had to be like, okay, girl, all right, you want to talk about this? You want to talk to people? You don't like how things are going? You have to push through. You have to go on these spaces and go on these platforms and be a voice of clarity, a voice of reason, a voice of alternative realities to introduce. You have to introduce. If this is a game about who's selling the best dope, girl, I got some good stuff. I got some good juice over here. Let me just tell you, okay? I'm going to repeat this. The cold, hard truth is, no matter how much we are left dissatisfied by these platforms, they are not going to dissolve overnight. You know those moms who like freak out about like what their kids watch and what platforms their kids are on? Well, I hate to break it to you, no matter how much we cry and scream and watch our children become victims to it, they're not going away. So we need to create a blueprint. We need to create a digital hygiene for our children. We need to have these conversations. We need to adapt to this world with our kids and model this behavior for them, to have these conversations with them, because I mean, like, 2-year-olds are on iPads. You know what I mean? Like, we're past the point of like tiptoeing around certain subject matter. And it's not to vilify. If you want your kid to play Roblox, go ahead. Just know, at least be knowledgeable. At least be knowledgeable of what's going on. And if that is something that you agree with, then okay. The theory of adaptation may not be for you. And maybe you will become extinct. That's not necessarily my problem. But I do care enough, and this is why I'm talking about it, because we do have power to change things. We have power to build things. Never forget that. The whole cold hard truth is, no matter how much we are left dissatisfied by these platforms, they are not going to dissolve overnight. But what we can do is adapt, not acquiesce, but adapt. Adaptation is calling us to pause and formulate a new ethics that instructs us to merge these two separate ecologies, human and machine, because we are cyborgs. We are embedded. with these machines in a reality, right? In order to establish a baseline of symbiosis rather than parasitism. Parasites, I talked about that before. Parasites will take from you till you die. Symbiosis is more of a relationship of give and take. It's, it's working together to survive. In Darwin's theory of species adaptation, I am not a biologist. I am not a natural historian. None of that. If you know somebody who could talk about Darwin's theory with me and really explain this shit to me, please send them my way. Please, I would love to do a phone call with you. I will love to host you and we'll have a conversation and you educate me and we can have, respectful dialogue regarding Darwin's theory of species adaptation because I want to know more. And I am not going to pose like I know it all. But in that theory, he concludes that these adaptations do not happen in a vacuum, but they happen in relation to the environment. What must what must we shed and what must we gain in an environment digitized to mass capacity? Early adoption, a public interest in new technology systems and protocols would give power to steer these things to new horizon. I'm gonna revisit that thought. What about these digital platforms are hostile? Okay, these are questions I'm asking myself. Why do they feel hostile? That's what's wrong. Can we name what's wrong? Could we collectively name what's wrong first? Because the only way you can adapt is to know how to adapt, right? What must we gain in order to survive, thrive, and reproduce successfully in these digital realms, these platforms, and all of that? What do we need so that we don't get extinct? Can we name the cyber environment we live in? Can you name the environment you live in now? What's like, can you really understand where you live, where your human body is situated now? Now take that and put that to the next level in the cyber environment. These corporate platforms are making us believe that they are home when they are really exploiting and using us to generate more data so that they know us better than we know ourselves. The dark forest theory of the internet explains about the potential for hostile predators and the importance of building spaces to prevent a predator-prey relationship. This is very interesting to me. Okay. I have a couple theories that build upon this and I'll do another video kind of connecting the dots, but the dark forest theory and then the dark forest theory of the internet, which was coined by Yancey Strickland over at Meta Label. Shout out. I really like what he's doing over there. Um but it's this theory that we don't believe, like we don't know if there's other life out in outer space in the universe, because showing yourself would mean that you are giving potential hostile civilizations and people and entities and aliens permission to destroy you. And so the dark forest theory is like, hey, if we all hide, then we don't destroy each other. And if we don't destroy each other, we can all mind our business in our own little space. Now take that concept and put it on the interwebs, where it's like we know that there's predatorial behavior happening on these platforms. And if you're like me and you felt it to the extent where you're like, I don't even want to be on here. I don't even want to be on here. How do we move through it? How can we have an invisible cloak that allows us to move through this new world without, giving ourselves up to be consumed, giving ourselves up to be spotted and detected and pillaged and colonized and put into a new form of enslavement? I think the internet, specifically these platforms as it is given to us, is constructed so that we consistently become victims of its predatory logic. I think that while so many of us are looking for balance in these digital spaces, we have not quite understood that balance cannot be found in platforms, algorithms, and code meant to take it away. If there's anything that you need to learn about successfully living life, is believe what people show you and believe what people tell you they are, because they're usually telling the truth. Um and so as soon as we understand that we can use these platforms to our advantage, but there has to be a certain point in which we have to migrate away from them, then we'll use them with more focus and intent rather than just saying, no, there's good aspects. There's good aspects. Okay, the good aspects don't outweigh the design. Just remember that. Balance in cyberspace comes from creating an infrastructure in cyberspace that nurtures and respects the laws of balance. I said this before. World building has become a buzzword, and I like it. It's one of those buzzwords that make me feel all tingly inside, and that makes me feel like, yeah, I can do this. Like, that's amazing. We all been there, okay? We all know those buzzwords that we're just like, that feels good. I like that. World building. The way a lot of people have talked about world building has done it such a disservice, um, that it's like world building is literally being God in a sense. And you have to understand that the worlds that we build have to have laws and principles and rules and structure. And certain laws and principles, like, for instance, the law of gravity or thermodynamics, these laws and principles exist in these worlds that we're going to build. And so, if you want a world that respects balance, if you want a world that perpetuates harmony, equilibrium, you have to create laws and infrastructure in order to have these as an outcome, to have balance as an outcome, in order to have harmony as an outcome, abundance as an outcome. These have to be part of the foundation, the infrastructure. These platforms don't. Read Meta's white paper. Read it. It's very fascinating. Even going to the court, going through like the court cases with Meta, like they're just like not like they're unapologetic. Like they're unapologetic. And so if we're dealing with unapologetic platforms, we have to be unapologetic with our worlds as well. Okay. Almost done. Hanging in there. Ooh, this one was a little bit interesting. And I'm going to make another video, some more stuff about time, because time is inextricably linked with matter, and time in the digital spaces and the digital platforms operate very interestingly. Linear time, we are all given access simultaneously. We're all given access to play by plays, the latest news, opinions, reactions to global events at the same time. Local time doesn't really exist anymore now that we are all operating as products of manufactured history, and the fact that time is no longer our own. You know, I live in a community and I go to work in the community. And the conversations that I have with my coworkers are sometimes very interesting because most of the conversations have nothing to do with our community, with where we live, with even our real lives. Most of the conversations, did you see this? Did you hear that? Did you see this? Did you hear that? That happened all the way over there, causing immense anxiety, causing paranoia, causing depression, sadness, loss of hope. But the world that they are living in now, right here, can bring abundance, joy, gratitude, health, wealth, opportunity, community. But we can't operate, we can't see that because we've all attributed, we have all been connected to this one form of time through storytelling, through these platforms of breaking news, you know what I mean? Like, this is the whole media machine that Marshall McLuhan talks about. The media. Like, what is this? What is this? What are we dealing with? So, yeah, so we're not on the time of our families, we're not on the time of our communities, we're not on the time of our loved ones. Instead, we shape our lives to fit around what is given to us instead of shaping our lives around what we create. So our lives are being shaped around information, data, content, visuals, whatever that's given to us. Basically, we're being told how to live versus shaping our lives around what we want to create. There's a distinct difference, and I know that difference because I've lived in the world where it was. I can hear my baby cry. I've lived in the world of being shaped, but now I'm living in the world of shaping. Okay, media is just that, a mediator. The purpose is to mediate our experience of real life for us. So these platforms, this media machine, this thing that has come about is living our life for us. It's teaching us how to live our life. It's living so that we can sit back and not live. We log on to media platforms and then we log off real life. The rules of adaptation are simple and they're necessary. And I'm going to wrap it up because it's been a minute. And I'm so very glad that I was able to break that down. There's something very cathartic about writing and then talking about your essay. For those of you who listened all the way through, you're a freaking G. And I hope I can return the favor. If you have any questions, please ask away. Comments, please comment. Be nice because, like, there's no need not to be. Like, I want to hear your opinion. Um, I truly do. I want to have dialogue. So go ahead and comment. And yeah, I feel so good. I feel so good. I feel so good. I feel so good. Thank you for this opportunity, God. Thank you for this opportunity. The interwebs. Thank you, Meta. Thank you, Meta. Because thank you, YouTube. Thank you, Google. Thank you, OpenAI. At the end of the day, I'm using these products so that I can further synthesize and create a new world. But until next time, I appreciate you guys. And yeah, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna jump into talking more about time and adaptation and what that means and what that can look like in this day and age. But until next time, my loves, ciao.